This is Naoki Yoshida.
This is Fern Halls.
And you are listening to Aetheryte Radio.
Aetheryte Radio.
Here we go.
There we go. Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Aetheryte Radio. We haven't even started, and we have a hype train here on Twitch. Thank you so much, everybody, for the subs. We appreciate it. So, again, welcome to Aetheryte Radio. This is Gamerscape's Final Fantasy XIV podcast. I'm FusionX. Joining me today, we've got Xenedra, we've got Anonymoose, we've got Rook, and joining us today, we also have Lemon Drop from Recipe Reborn. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So real quick, couple tiny bits of news. Obviously, since our last episode, we've redone the website. So when you go to the site, things will look a little different. We have been working on this for just over a year now. It's one of these things where there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. We've got dark mode now. We've got leaderboards. We also have our new thing, and I think we did touch on this maybe about a month or so ago, what we're calling Gamer Escape Plus, which is a way for you to support the site, but also not have to deal with ads. And if you join that, you also earn points that you can redeem for physical items. So make sure to check that out, gamerescape.com/subscribe for more information. So that is that. Lyrics are out for Endwalker Footfalls. If you have not checked those out, please do so. It's super hype. The music video is out now for Endwalker. The vinyl is out.
Can you find all of the Easter eggs?
The EP is out now for Endwalker and Endwalker Footfalls. It is great. Soken made a silly tweet. Like, it's great. Everything is like full hype swing now. So make sure to check all of that out if you haven't seen it yet. And I think that's really the bulk of the news for this week. So, yeah, we're just going to get into it.
Let's talk about food.
So,
Yeah.
this week, we planned this originally. We were going to do this last week, and then the date on the cookbook kind of got ninja'd back. We're like, oh, I guess no one will have it for last week, so we'll move it. Now we'll talk about it because we have it. So, Final Fantasy XIV, the ultimate Final Fantasy XIV cookbook, which is backwards on my camera. Thank you so much for flipping the camera, Discord. It is
Oh,
now
dang,
out.
I didn't bring my copy. Everybody else has it. I don't have
So-
mine.
I
I don't have a sticker. How come you guys have a sticker?
You don't have a sticker? You don't have a backwards officially licensed?
Okay,
Mine's
just
fake.
pretend you're holding this one. Just
There you go.
I'll hold this one.
Thank
and
you,
you can
yeah,
hold
yeah,
this one.
I'm actually hanging out
you're-
with
you're
Lemon
next
Drop
to-
today.
Your
so I'm
cams are
right
next to each other.
Lemon.
So if you just reach your hand over a little bit, Zen, go the other way, and we'll just pretend this is your hand. You're like, hey, look.
Just hold this. There you go.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So I actually ordered the GameStop version, and then GameStop sent me the shipping email and was like, hey, so you'll have it Monday. And I was like, oh, okay. So we did some behind the scenes things, and I got a couple recipes from some people, and then I'm like, but you know what? I might want a copy if we're going to talk about this today, if I need to like reference something. So I actually overnighted this from Amazon. It was sitting in front
did
of the
you?
door this morning. Yeah. I got lucky. It wasn't even an option until yesterday. So I got real lucky. So I used that
Good for you.
this morning, made some of the honey muffins. My first time baking ever. So that was interesting. The kitchen is a mess now.
Amazing.
So-
Ever at all?
Ever.
You had never been
First baking clear.
I don't cook.
First time bonus.
You are talking to a person that has, and I'm being honest here, I have ruined Easy Mac.
Oh,
Easy is
You have
in
to-
the name.
Let's be honest. Easy Mac comes ruined. That's not food.
No. I mean, Fusion, you
know.
have to start somewhere. It wasn't so long ago
Mhm.
that I myself, a handful of years ago, was ruining like jar pasta sauce with just pasta. And now I can cook things pretty well. For the most part, I feel like I could cook things pretty well. Although baking is in and of itself its own beast. So I'm actually really proud of you for doing baking first.
I
find
used
that
to,
much
to
harder.
joke that I could make a mean frozen pizza, and if we don't have frozen pizza, I know how to open a mean DoorDash app. So
There you
yeah,
go.
this
I
is-
boil
this
in
is-
mean water.
Yeah.
You cannot even, because you tackled a recipe that I was actually surprised you were going to tackle, and it looks
Yeah,
like
that's
it
like
turned out
I
well.
I like it was kind of a joke at first because I thought it was gonna go like really bad, and I was like, I've got all the ingredients for Lano and toast here. We're just gonna pretend this didn't happen at all.
You
But
didn't
it
even need it.
actually
It
went
was
okay.
it was funny. I had all the ingredients, and my plan was to make the honey muffins last night, and so I had everything ready. But I was also like trying to get work done because I had a deadline. So it's like 9 o'clock. I'm like, you know what? I'll do it in the morning. It's fine. And then like an hour later, I see Moose tweet that he's just now starting to make cheesecake. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it was a night project.
I'm very lucky in that, although I feel pretty confident in cooking most stuff, right? What I wanted to do actually was the lemon waffles because, I mean, maybe a little bit in honor of Lemon Drop because you're here with us today, but also because my partner is actually incredible with making waffles. And I am terrible. Like, I get so nervous about baking. Like I said, I can look at like any other kind of recipe at this point and mostly feel okay. But when it comes to baking stuff, I get nervous. So I was like, I want to try waffles because they're sort of baking adjacent, but I know there's somebody here who can definitely make them if I mess them up. So the night before, I was sitting there like, oh, what are we going to do tomorrow? And Bebop had the foresight to be like, why don't we make the lemon curd tonight and then it can sit and then we can do the other stuff? And I went, oh, I didn't even think of that. So we made
That's a
curd
smart
last
Bebop.
night. I know. It was my first time doing anything like that. I learned a ton about like how to be really careful that the egg doesn't cook and all kinds of stuff. Like I was so nervous this curd was going to mess up. But Moose, much like you, it actually went really smooth and I think it turned out really tasty.
I, on the
I'm
other
excited
hand,
to see your pictures of the lemon waffles.
yeah. Did you make it extra pretty?
I tried. It was I tried to make it pretty, but also we actually busted out a pipette to do the whipped cream. Because we have those, again, not because I use them specifically, but because Bebop is really good at baking. So we like tried to pipe the whipped cream on, but then I was trying to drizzle the lemon over it, and then it melted some of the whipped cream, and I went, I should have seen this. I should have seen this coming. And so it kind of turned into like a beautiful mess. But I think it was more delicious because of that. You know, it's just tasty. It's just tasty overall. The waffles maybe got a little soggy because I went a little ham.
Messy food does have that quality to it that you're like, yeah, I'm gonna destroy this with my mouth right now.
I mean, really,
You know what I mean?
at the end of the day, it's all going down the same hole. Like, whatever.
True.
As soon as I like tasted the batter for the cheesecake, like the cheese souffle, I knew like everything was going to be fine because no matter how bad it went in the oven, I could still eat it. Like no one had to see the last few pictures. I could just like because I was just like I had the spatula and I was just eating every drop of batter that didn't go into that pan. It was delicious.
Think go
I
wrong
did,
with cheesecake.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh no, I was just gonna say that I was, as mentioned in chat, I tried to make a cheese souffle on stream not too long ago, but it was during a time period when my oven was broken, and so I was using a small convection, like a countertop convection oven, and it really didn't work out. Which is funny because I've actually made that style of cheesecake before in the current oven that I have, which at the time was broken, and it turned out fine. So, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you know, maybe you're just naturally good at baking, so good for you. It's a tough one, the souffle style cheesecake.
I was so close. Like there were a couple of times and I'm like, this is the part I'm worried about. And I kind of skated through it okay. And I'm like, cool, I've got enough experience now where I think I could replicate this. And then kind of right at the finish line, I was a little too anxious to check on whether water had come through the tinfoil because I had to use 2 sheets. And that led to it cooling a little faster than anticipated, and so it shrunk a little bit, and so it didn't have the full jiggly wonderfulness that it was supposed to. But I think I've learned enough to nail it next time.
I think you can feel good about what you've done because you made a souffle and I made dango.
Yeah.
I mean, Dango is also in and of itself something that, like, if you're not familiar with how to make that, I mean, it's still just as daunting, to be honest. It's nice though because a lot of these foods, I do think, there are so many other resources that if you're looking at them and you're kind of nervous about it, or like even if you look at the recipe. And I mean, honestly, I would say even a lot of the ones that they had marked as like medium level difficulty in the cookbook, if you are
There's a
not
difficulty
someone-
marking? I didn't even look.
there
Is there really? I
is.
don't
There
think I
is a
noticed that.
difficulty marking. Yes, they have a little list of what the difficulty is. And I would say that like medium up, at least from what I was looking at, would probably be for people who are like familiar with cooking. Like even some of the medium recipes, I was like, I don't know if when I started cooking, I would be able to do that. Like,
Easy.
yes, like some of them are easy, some of them aren't. But the great thing is that actually I have to give so much credit to my partner today because my partner just is great at this stuff and knows a lot of resources. But, when we were looking at making the waffles, for example, they went, hey, let's pull up Good Eats. And we watched the episode about making waffles or like, things like that, where if you're looking at a
God,
food,
you were prepared.
I mean, I learned a lot, honestly. And like I said, I feel pretty comfortable with most general cooking recipes now, even if baking is still kind of nerve wracking to me. I ruin like cookies. I just destroy baking. I'm so bad at it. I think it's because I'm one of those people that tends to like to kind of eyeball things or like, I'm going to sprinkle in this or a dash
You
of
made
that.
the
or
fancy one.
I know, of course, lemon did. They look beautiful. So like I feel okay with most recipes, but if you are looking at some of these and you're going, like me, you're nervous about baking or you're not sure about something, there are like a ton of great instructional things out there. Oh my gosh, go watch Lemon stream, ask questions like while Lemon is cooking something. Like there's so many great resources to set yourself up for more success, or if you're okay to fail, that's fine too. I had a lot of people come into chat even yesterday who were saying that they wanted to start out. I was like, have you ever baked? And they went, no. And I went, what do you think you're going to start out with from the book? And they went, I'm going to do the Minstrel's Ballad Extreme.
Yes.
I'm going to do the croissants. And I was like, oh, buddy.
Okay.
Okay.
You in 3 days.
I love that that's
You're
how they
going to be
phrased it,
frozen
though.
for a while on that.
Here's the one you could do without too much trouble, and then here's the one that is themed in the game that you are playing to kick your ass. It is in phases. The book actually has phase 1, phase 2, like a fight. I thought that was cute as hell.
Can confirm for first-time bakers, honey muffins aren't too bad.
Good to know.
The Dongo.
I haven't had a chance to look through the entire book yet. I received it on this Tuesday. So that wasn't the day it was released, was it? Oh shoot, I forgot.
I think
Days.
it was.
What are days?
I think it was.
It was the day it was released. I received mine on the Thursday. I was mistaken. So I haven't had a chance to like go through everything and like read it all. I've seen a lot of like tweets about it, and I know the author of the book. She streams on Twitch. It's Pixelated Vika. Am I allowed to link in the chat? maybe-
You may not have that option. Let me see if we can.
Anyway, I'll continue what I was saying while I find the link. I know the author of the book. She's done many different fandom cookbooks before. Oh, here we go. Oh no! It did. My clipboard failed. My clipboard failed. I might not be fast enough. Trying to do too many things at once doesn't work.
I do see while we're looking for that, who asks in chat, like,
There we go.
what else is particularly Final Fantasy about it for those who don't have it yet?
Okay.
The cookbook itself, I'm guessing, is what you're asking about. I mean, they themed like all the recipes are recipes that I believe are like craftable items in game. So there is that. They also went through, which I thought was really cute, and we can talk more about this later because I want Lemon to be able to finish your thought. But they themed, all the different things. Like you get a little blurb about, a couple of the characters that you encounter in various crafting beast tribes and stuff like that as they tour the world, and they sort of discuss either the characters or places or the regional kind of context of these different foods, which is really neat. There were a few iconic recipes that weren't in the book that I was surprised about.
Only a
but-
few?
A lot, maybe.
Look,
but I mean,
do we really want to eat Archon loaf?
yes.
Maybe.
No.
Are you kidding
Just
me? My
one
cat's
time.
dying for Archon Loaf. I'm gonna do it after Endwalker is out and I know what ingredients exist in Charlayan. because I was planning to do it at a certain, like a follower goal, and I reached the goal before Endwalker came out, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like make a food, like speculatively make a food. You know what I mean? Like I could just make one with no reference, but then Endwalker's going to come out, and there's going to be like a certain type of fish that like exists right outside of Charlayan that I wouldn't have known about unless I waited, right? So
Makes
I'm
sense.
planning to do it. I do have some ideas. I've been talking about it with my chat, and people want to eat it. It's like don't underestimate the
Don't knock it till you
curiosity of
try it.
people. Yeah, people do want to know. People do want to know. But what I was saying about the book is that uh yeah, so the author, her link is right there in the chat, so you can click on that link and click follow. She has been making her own recipes on stream in the past week or so. And she also has made other cookbooks, the Street Fighter cookbook, the Fallout cookbook, the Destiny
Oh.
cookbook. So this is the fourth like official fandom cookbook that she's written. And to answer the question about what makes it specifically Final Fantasy, there is flavor text. It's written from the perspective of two different characters that are in the game, and I won't spoil it, but there's flavor text on every recipe to describe their journey through food in within the realm of Heidelin and Norvrent.
It's super
So
cute.
it's very cute. Even if you're not into food, it still has some enjoyment for people who aren't going to cook.
Yeah, there was also too, and I forget the dish, but there was one dish too where the flavor text was like, oh, so like this is what Emmerich keeps serving when the Warrior of Light comes over to eat. And so it's like, okay, now we know.
There were so many cute little things like that. I mean, when you think about food can tell so many different stories. It can tell the story of like a people, a culture, a region, resources, a time period, right? Where certain ingredients were available that may not have been, or, were more limited in different ways. It can tell you so much about people and what they particularly love, and or something about their personality as well. Like when you think how many times if you ask somebody like, what's your favorite flavor of X, or what's your favorite food, it's such a convenient icebreaker because it usually tells us a little bit about somebody and what they enjoy, right? And I think a lot of the recipes have these little tidbits. So I made the lemon waffles, but the other thing that I made was the espresso con panna, which is Ishtola's apparently drink of choice, particularly when she goes to visit Matoya. She sits and studies and drinks it. And like, even as I was drinking it, I went, this is such a good pick for her. It's a little sweet and very bitter. And I love like the combination, I was like, this is something that I could totally see. And given the context of Charlayan and the idea too, you're powering yourself through, you're getting some energy, you're staying awake for a late night, or I think there's so many little things that they did like that in the book. There's even a detail about like Alphino and Alice fighting over pizza slices, because apparently they both love eating pizza. There's a devastating entry about Knight's bread, which was apparently Horschafon's favorite bread. And you can just read that entry if you want to cry aside a little bit. There's a lot of different like little details in the book that I think, even if it's not, literally a lore book, it gives you a little bit of appreciation for the context of those recipes.
Yeah, it's written from the perspective of being within the universe. It's not outside of the universe commenting on the universe.
It's cute that you say Ishtola's drink fits her. I made also the X potion, which is what I just drank a little bit of. And that's the Urianger entry. And this does feel like Urianger. Like it's got lavender and honey and citrus and gin. And that seems very Urianger to me.
Oriange is my favorite character, and I did look
Yes.
at that. And lavender and honey, I recently bought some bath bombs, some lavender honey bath bombs, and you also said citrus. I am citrus, so it works for me. It's doing a lot. It's doing a lot for me.
I had a journey trying to find lavender anything.
Mm.
I already had these bottles in my house, so I was like, I have to make the X potion. That'll be great. I can have the little X potion, and anytime anybody says a bad joke, I can drink some X potion and refill my HP. But so at first I was like, maybe I could just find the lavender syrup already made, because that to me made more sense. Like they would just have lavender syrup somewhere. No, I found dried lavender before I found lavender syrup, so I made the lavender syrup.
Good for you. Good for you.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's cool that you did that. I mean, I'm surprised honestly because it seems like a lot of cocktails and things now have been experimenting more with
Right?
like lavender flavors. So I would think there would be, yeah, like some lavender, extract or things like that that they would have that you could just use for things. I mean, that's awesome that you made it from scratch though, honestly.
I was a little scared, but also like adventuresome because I don't really like lavender scents, but I was like, maybe it'll taste different. I'm pretty good with the taste. It's all right, yeah.
I wonder if
I
like
recently
a beverage depot or something would have stuff like that. Maybe.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I recently went to the liquor store. I went to go run an errand last weekend that didn't turn out. So I went to the liquor store to make myself feel better. I was
To
like,
make
"Oh,
yourself feel
really
better
didn't
after
turn
the
out.
errands
this
didn't
didn't
work.
work out. I'm gonna go get some booze." So I went to the liquor store and they had lavender gin, I think, and I was like,
Hmm.
maybe, but I didn't buy it because I was looking for something comforting and I needed to console myself, so I didn't want to get anything new.
I just
Well,
I feel
But
like
I did see it.
the nice thing is that now on raid nights, if it seems like Zen's performance is getting progressively worse and worse over the night, I can just ask you like, how much high potion have you had tonight? And I think it'll
Oh,
it'll
and you
work.
know what I can say in return, Rook? If my healer was healing me, I wouldn't have to take a high potion.
Oh.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Well, I didn't come here to get
But
personally attacked. No, I'm kidding.
but I would never say that because my healer is excellent.
Oh, thank you, Zach. Oh my
You know,
Set him
gosh.
up and knock him down.
talking about odd flavors of drinks and stuff. I saw an ad. This is slightly off topic. They have Arby curly fries flavored vodka now.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
Like
saw that in the food
that was a
beast.
thing
I saw
that
that on Food
somebody
Beast, yeah.
decided to make. Okay.
Why?
They also have
You
gingerbread
know what?
Mountain Dew.
They have already made savory flavored vodkas. They have like chili vodka, things like that. So while I'm not really hype about French fry flavored vodka, I could see where they're coming from.
I mean,
I mean, I
I
guess
do
they
love curly
both-
fries.
They both
Yeah, me
relate to
too.
they both relate to potatoes.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Mm.
You said curly fries, and I was like, "Oh yeah, wait, tell me more." And then I was like, "Vodka."
Vodka.
Now, I do have a question. And this is something because I know so Moose obviously you dive and join us a lot of times for our lore episodes, right? So the lore component of things. And I actually think this is something that I've always loved about the content you do too, Lemon. The fact that even like you were talking about with Sherlion, trying to create flavors or palettes that make use of things that are roughly the equivalent or as close as you can possibly get to what would actually be regional ingredients and or stuff that would be found or is established as being found in the game, right? I'm curious from both of your perspectives, did you feel like the maybe realization of the lore element within this book, the ingredients used, the stuff they substituted, even those like those first couple pages that had the regional blurbs where they were talking a little bit about the food of each region, did you feel like overall that gave you enough to dive into? Do you think maybe it could have been more robust? Were there certain things that stood out? How did you feel about it overall?
Who goes first?
You can go first. You can go first.
Okay. I think the word I would use kind of is charm. There's a certain attention to detail to it that is very, very charming, where there could have been substitutions that would have been easy, and they didn't take them. And there could have been things that, because it would have lowered kind of the quality and the experience and made it maybe a little less faithful to the game. So I appreciate that. Like, what's one I could open? Let's say like the Crimson Cider. Like, it's really going to make you go get loquats and pink peppercorns. And there's, so it's like, there's an attention to detail to it that's very, very charming. And it's, if not literally lore accurate to the game, it has at least tried to keep the same spirit where it can and the same feel where it can. The Crimson Cider actually has an Alamegan version and a Doman version,
I like that.
which I thought was really cool.
Mhm.
So I think like even where it's not like literal stressing about the content of the text in the game where you have to use all the ingredients from the synth, even when it's not doing that, I think it's going out of its way to feel right and be in the most important part, being in the right headspace.
I also really liked how in certain recipes they use other recipes. So like when you make
Yes.
Lenotian toast, they refer to walnut bread.
Walnut bread, yeah.
I recently did that on stream with my own version of that, and yeah, it's fun to do that. I actually made like 3 or 4. I had several streams. Like I had a stream where I made the walnut bread, and then I made basically every recipe that used it. And it's fun to do that because not number one, I'm a food nerd and I don't like to waste. So I was really excited to, continuously use the bread over multiple days and put it into other recipes and see how it fits within different cuisines, because Lenotian toast and the Bismarck sandwich, they both use it, and those are both Lenotian foods. But it's also in the Alpine breakfast, which is an Ishgardian food, and it's also in the gourmet lunch, which off the top of my head I can't remember if there's a region associated to that. But it's interesting to see it pop up in different places to see how things are shared. Different ingredients are shared across different types of cuisine, because that's parallel to real life.
Hmm.
It's real. It's realistic, and it makes the world and the universe seem more immersive and believable because it parallels real life.
It's also a great way too if you're like looking for, I mean, again, if you're somebody who's shopping on a budget or you're not really familiar with cooking or, stuff like that, there are ways that you can try to cook, like you were saying, Lemon, reusing certain elements. Or, it can be much easier sometimes if you're like, hey, there is one thing that is shared between these recipes and I want to make multiple things, but I also don't want to buy like an entire bag of, oh gosh, beet sugar was one of the things in these recipes, right? It was like beet sugar. And I was like, oh, well, I'm curious about trying that because we like to try different, substitutes or different things. But I was like, are there other things that I can make that would make use of this so that it's not like I've bought this bag and then I just, made one recipe and then I'm like, okay. So when I was looking at those, I went like, oh, hey, well, there's this whipped cream that you can make in both of these. Or like you were saying, there's this bread that you can make in both of these. So that you're kind of like, you're getting to experiment with more stuff that's in the book, but I think it also can be a little bit more like economical for you, or even just energy wise economical for you if you don't really know if you can handle prepping and preparing 5 different things within the span of like 5 days.
Yeah, that's true. And like to beet sugar is common. Like you can use beet sugar in place of any sugar. Most, like, depending on where you are in the world, beet sugar is just sugar. That's where the sugar comes from where you are. In some places, like in the southern hemisphere and like around the equator, it's usually sugar cane, but it can be used interchangeably. So in that case, you don't need to worry about it. You can just put it in whatever baked good you have, and it's going to still work. So you're good. You're good, Rook.
No, I mean, I tasted it. I was like, oh yeah, it just tastes, fine. And like I think those
It's just
recipes
sugar.
is it's sugar. Like the same with they had us use oat milk and stuff like that.
Yep.
And honestly, I did appreciate a lot of that because like here we've also been recently trying to do like slightly more healthful, mindful cooking, and cholesterol conscious as well has been a big thing for us, is because we're old. We're becoming old people here. So,
Huh?
like these were things that we
Can't
had
say
How
that
dare
to
you?
I know,
me.
like these are things we
I'm
had to
in this photo
consider
and I don't like it.
for our health, which never was something I would have said in college when I was eating buffalo wings every single day of my life from the shop that I liked. So now that we're doing things more healthfully, I did actually really appreciate that. And they also in the book too, even in the back, had some like substitution suggestions and things. If you're trying to cook meatless or if you're trying to substitute different things, you can put this in instead of that. Or even listing on the recipes themselves, like, is this
Mhm.
dairy free? Is this gluten free? Is this, which I thought was nice for people who maybe have those same considerations or are just really old, like I am.
Well, I not too long ago I made the ovum meatballs, and I don't eat beef. So a lot of times when I am trying to find an ingredient that would work in place of ovum, which I think in game is more closely looks like a goat. I'm using lamb a lot, but and I love lamb. Lamb's great. I can eat lamb, but it's expensive. So
Yeah.
when I did the ovum meatballs, I used Beyond Beef, and it was great. It was amazing. It turned out fine. And
I
the texture was good, the flavor was good, and I didn't have, like, yeah, Beyond Beef is a little bit more expensive than just buying ground beef, but it's less expensive than buying lamb. So, plus it's plant-based, and I had no complaints about it. It tasted great, it worked fine, and it was easy for me to get. My local grocery store has it. Sometimes my local grocery store doesn't have ground lamb, but I've said this many times. My local grocery store is a budget place, so if I need to buy ground lamb, I have to go a little bit further out of my way. But if I want to just walk and find something easy, Beyond Beef is a great option. And for things like moussaka, which is in the game, or jamal moussaka, or like shepherd's pie, I think uses antelopes, which is a little confusing. Why is it called shepherd's pie if it has antelopes in it? But that's a different conversation. Those kinds of things, ground meat, like you don't have to use meat. You can use poultry, you can use Beyond Meat, Beyond Beef, and it works. It's still good.
I
Maybe
did
there
like
is.
seeing. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say maybe there's an antelope shepherding. Maybe there's like antelope herding
Yeah.
that we didn't know about. That's canonical to Final Fantasy 14. Now
Perhaps
I need
maybe
to
Moose
think about
can
that.
tell us, are there any antelope
Yeah.
shepherds that we don't know about? Please inform me, because
By
I
name?
What are
it's
the
just like
names of the antelope shepherding?
What are the
you-
names that
So
the
you have that in your
antelopers?
encyclopedia head? Isn't that in there?
I don't
Most
expect you to know off the top of your head.
most of the antelope related lore in my head is like, hey, did you know there used to be a system where they would run away from you if you got close to them, and they just got rid of it. And so now that's like, it overpowers all of the other antelope related lore, I think.
If we ever go
That's
to
a
the
good
new
tidbit,
world,
though. Well,
Koji's gonna be like, we need an antelope shepherd. What? The cookbook. We need to make sure that this is solid. We can't.
I'm sure there's an antelope farm somewhere.
Like there are
Oh,
shepherds in the game. Like there's
Mhm.
lambs. There's like the little lambs, the little
Yeah.
cutie lambs, the floofy. You get the fleece from it. But why? I don't know. There's plenty of inconsistencies like that in the game that I have come across many times. And not only that, there's inconsistencies across language. The difference between like the English localization of the descriptions of each recipe are not consistent across all languages. And the ones that I find have the least amount of detail are the Japanese ones. They're the most bare bones. And then sometimes the French and the German ones will be sort of parallel, but not quite.
Oh my gosh.
And it will, like the English one might say, like, say for, I think the lemon waffles is a good example of this, where the lemon waffles description says that they're baked, which you don't bake a waffle. You don't bake a waffle. But if you read the French description, it doesn't say that. And if you read the German description, it doesn't say that. So there's plenty of room to interpret, what's going on in the game. There's lots of space for creativity. And I think that sometimes when there's too much limitations, it's a little bit hard. Like some limitations are good for art, but too many limitations is bad. So it's sometimes I try to find like extra details where I'm like, why is this recipe is kind of bland? Like there's not really a lot going on in here. Maybe I can learn something more by reading the Japanese description, or by reading the German description, or by reading the French description. And I only have some advantage in that by speaking French. I'm Canadian. I grew up speaking French and did most of my education in French. So I can actually read and understand those, but the other ones I have to use Google Translate. So it's useful just to have like a little bit more information, just a tiny little bit sometimes. Because even just one little piece of information can put you on a path of an idea that you didn't have before. So it's useful. Lots of research
Somewhere
and
along
reading, though.
the lines of that, I already had rice flour, but there's two types of rice flour in the donga recipe: glutinous and not glutinous. And they don't list them as glutinous and not glutinous. They list them as like shiramata and joshinko or something like that.
Yeah, Shiro Tak
I'm gonna look it up.
Shiro Taka Shiro Matak. I don't know. Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata.
I forget.
It-
I know. I've tried to find it. I can't remember
Okay,
what it's
it's
called right now.
joshinki and shiratamako.
There you go.
One of which I think the first one is non-glutinous and the second is glutinous. And I had a a bag of rice flour that had a Korean label on it. So I had to figure out if that one was the glutinous or not glutinous. And then I, at the store, was like, okay, I know both the Japanese and Korean labels for glutinous. None of these look like that. There was one bag that had French translation on it, and I was like, that word is glutinous. So
There
it was
you
a
go.
language. It was a language journey to find both kinds. First to find which one I had, and then to figure out which the one I needed was.
Right.
They do also have at the start of the book, for anybody who might be curious, like a breakdown list of different ingredients, particularly the ones that I think come from like Japanese recipes usually,
Yeah.
where it kind of gives you a description of what they are or where they might be. We've found as we've tried to cook various Japanese recipes that you can find a lot of stuff to order online, but you have to kind of think ahead with certain ingredients, like, oh, what am I going to need or what kind of thing. And then if you have like local shops, like it depends on the place, but like by us, we have a huge place called Mitsuwa, which has like it's a massive kind of mini mall almost. And if you really get lost, sometimes if you just like very nicely approach somebody at the store and you're like, hey, I'm trying to make this thing. Do you know what it is? Or like, can you help me find this? They will sometimes like actually like go help you or like point out different things or even suggest things that they themselves think might work. So like don't be too daunted. I think it's one of those things where sometimes we do want to try and cook a lot of different recipes from a lot of different places. And where you are, it might be harder or easier, but there are a lot of ways that you can get those ingredients to your home now if you need them or want them for different things. And yes, and people who can help you figure it out too. If you're looking at it and you're not like Zen and you're not able to put together like that's the
Oh my
French
gosh.
word and that's and
Like 20 years ago, I would have been screwed. I Googled most of that stuff, right?
Zen making her
I have
donga with the
struggle.
flowers of the world.
I have so many different flowers.
Yeah, it was mostly the Korean. I have a small grasp of Japanese, and French has some of the same letters and the same arrangements, so I'm kind of able to go, yeah, that's what that word probably is.
Yeah, that's fair. I have the exact same struggle as you to finding those rice flours. Like where I am, I'm in Toronto, which is a very multicultural city with many different restaurants and availability for ingredients. Unfortunately, Japanese ingredients is not one of the ones that we have a lot of. There are many Asian markets that cover many different types of cuisines, but very few Japanese ones. There's a small handful in the downtown area, which is where I am. There's a small handful, and there's a couple new ones actually that I haven't been to yet. So finding specifically those two different kinds of rice flour is not possible for me in person. But also because I'm in Canada, it's not possible for me to order them online either, unless I'm ordering them directly from Japan, which is very expensive. So that's a struggle for me sometimes. And the thing is that there's a certain confidence that you get over time with learning how to cook. I'm a culinary arts student. I've been in school since 2019. So I've made a lot of things. I've spent a lot of time substituting things and trying to see what works and what doesn't. And I've made dango before. Like it still works with the one that you can get that's like the rice flour from California, whatever brand that is. Can't remember what it is. It's like a white box. Mochiko, I think it is. Yeah, Mochiko. Like that still works. So like even if you're like me and you can't find those specific flours, you can still do it. Or you can do something else where you can like cook glutinous rice and beat the crap out of it, which I have done. I have done that too.
I did
So
that with
it
the
works.
strawberries because
Yeah, it works.
I'll just hold these up all awkwardly because I don't have any skewers. So it's these are the dango. The one in the middle has no flavor. Well, rice flavor. The green one is green tea and the pink one is strawberry. And for strawberry, they're like, get freeze-dried strawberries, grind those suckers up, and mix it into the stuff. So that was me with the strawberries. Just like I don't have a mortar and pestle, but I had like a muddler, so I was there with like a muddler crushing the strawberry.
Yeah, I think when I tried making that, I had like freeze-dried powdered, like already. It was already
Oh.
powdered, like something that you would put in a smoothie. So that worked for me. But yeah, like even things like the coffee biscuit recipe, it says to use in the book, it says to use espresso powder, which is a specific baking ingredient. It's not coffee powder that you get at the grocery store, like instant coffee. It's not that. It's a specific baker's ingredient that's for putting coffee flavor into your baked goods, and it does not exist for me anywhere. I can't get it.
Wow.
So I've tried many different things to try to like figure out how I can do something similar, and I happen to have a baking supply store that's really close to where I live that I could walk to that sells coffee extract. So rather than like vanilla extract, it's coffee extract. I haven't been there and purchased it yet, but at least I know that it exists and that I can try it. So, there's going to be lots of different people who are seeing this book and might see something, like somebody like me who's in Canada who can't find things that exist in this book. You can still do it. You just have to be a little bit tenacious. You need to meld tenacity and and then you can, pop a brave and go.
It's
I'm
just,
using
it's
many
just like
different,
in game.
systems right
Sometimes
now.
you need to make the ingredients for the one dish on the side and then use those. And,
Yes,
you can, yeah.
And I will say, we talked about this earlier, and Moose, I really liked the point that you brought up about how I do think they included a wide range. She included a wide range of different ingredients in this, right? Where I do think, and I see this with other gaming cookbooks, where it is almost like, and I think even chat was mentioning this, it's almost like, oh, here's kind of the vague veneer of the setting of the thing, like World of
Right.
Warcraft. And then it's just sort of like, but we're going to make this as dumb as possible so that anybody who, can read this can do it. And we're going to substitute whatever, just sort of like mass produce stuff that we can. And I think on one hand, that's very good because it does, in many ways, I think, make it more accessible to a lot of people. And we've got to be honest, while many of us are excellent gamers or crafters and gatherers in game, many of us also are not great at it IRL. And many of the people, like, it took me many years of trial and error, like I said, to get to the point where I could cook stuff. But it amazes me how many times I hear people say, like, especially in the gaming community, I don't cook, I never cook, I can't cook, and it's really about empowering yourself, right? It really is about learning step by step. And so some of these books will, I think, kind of appeal to like the lowest common denominator in a sense, where they try to make it as accessible as possible, which is not a bad thing inherently. But I was excited to see that in things like the 14 cookbook, I think there were some slightly more challenging ingredients used, some interesting things. I mean, even in these lemon waffles that we made, it was suggested that we use a vanilla bean and that you scrape out the seeds in the vanilla bean. And that seems like such a tiny thing. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be like, oh, yeah, sure, whatever. But I turned and looked at Bebop and I was like, I have never done that. I was like, I almost always use vanilla extract for things. And as I've admitted several times, I'm not usually very good at baking, nor do I try it very often. And most savory dishes I cook don't require that I use vanilla bean. So I was just like, this is actually really novel and really interesting to me. But as I went online, it turns out vanilla beans are sorry, they're really expensive.
Yeah, they are.
I almost got really spicy there. They're stupid
Of all the
expensive.
things to make you almost drop the F-bomb, vanilla beans was not on my list.
Yeah.
Sorry. They are very expensive. So what I would say is that, like, knowing what I know about a lot of the gaming community, which may be that you may not have a lot of excess money. Many of us may be trying to cook in bulk. We may be balancing life and work balance and MMO balance, which is a whole other thing. Just like Lemon was saying, don't be afraid to try to substitute or look up different recipes that are kind of the same thing and see like, oh, they didn't use vanilla bean or they didn't use this thing. Can I maybe do roughly the same? Because I do think that maybe one of my critiques of the book, although I think it is both a good thing and a bad thing, is that some of the recipes used like very specific ingredients or things that people might maybe not always know what to get, where to get it, how. So it's one of those things where, if you're looking for a cookbook that is just going to be like really generic, basic, I don't know if this one is really it, although there are some good recipes in there that are much simpler. But don't be afraid to try those other ones, you know, and look up other things or just try them, get a new ingredient. I had so much fun scraping out those vanilla beans. I don't even know why I found it so enjoyable, but I was in awe. I didn't realize that the seeds were so tiny. I didn't realize how pungent it is, and like it's so fragrant. It's so like, and I actually, as I was looking at it, I was just like, wait, so then vanilla extract is like this, but in alcohol? I was like, what? How do they distill the flavor? Oh my gosh. I mean, it was really fun to experiment in that way.
You
But I
just
understand too, people can't always do that.
you just gave me a headcanon. Uh yeah, no, I wanna echo the double-edged sword thing, because like you said, it can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on kind of the perspective you look at it. And I think for me, one of the perspectives I look at it is I do kind of expect game themed cookbooks to be a little hokey, to be a little bit of a cash grab, and to know that this one went went for a little more soul and went for a little more challenge tells me that this isn't just like any recipe you could Google up. You know, there's a few in here you're going to have to work for, which means that there's a few in here that are probably only in this book, you know, this is the only way you're going to come across them. At the end of the day, it's not a not Final Fantasy 14 cookbook that got Fusion X to bake for the first time. Like, so and now you're sitting here like, you're like, well, maybe, you know, we're gamers, maybe we can't afford this or that. And the first thing that pops into my mind is Yoshida just shutting that right down. Like, hold on, let me show you some Mog Station statistics. Here's our Fantasia for this quarter. You go ahead and you put those loquats in there. You put that vanilla in there.
I really actually liked seeing ingredients like lamb and duck on stuff, because I feel like that is more close, more what the actual recipe in the game is. Like, we don't have dodos anymore; they are gone. And if they were still alive, you could not kill them. But duck is a little bit more exotic than like chicken. But like Lippin was saying, you can definitely just go, I don't really like lamb, or I don't want to pay that. Let's take it down a notch. You have the Beyond Burger, you have actual beef with duck, do chicken. And I feel like people are more likely to go, take it a step down than give themselves that little extra oomph and bother to take it a step up. So I feel like putting it at the top is the best place to start.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think
like
there's-
anything is like with anything that requires skill, but like an art that requires skill, the more you do it, the better, the more confidence you have with doing it. And that's like the reason why I started doing this. Like I started a Recipe Reborn in 2019 and did demo videos, and I really enjoyed doing that, but editing sucks and I'd rather be cooking. So I stream now and I get to cook more time than like doing production stuff. So I have a lot of hours in making food, and trying new things is one of my favorite things to do. Like a lot of like a common question in my stream, and when people meet me for the first time, they'll say like, "What's your favorite thing to cook?" And I'll say something that I've never cooked before, because I want to learn. I want to try something new. I want to taste something. I want to have new experiences. You know what I mean? And the more you do it, the better attuned you are to that experience, and like having an open mind, and you know, just expanding your experience and expanding your palette. And even if you learn something like, oh, I don't really like this, that's still learning. That's still learning.
yeah.
What were you saying? I'm sorry, I talked over you there, Fusion.
I was saying, yeah, it's that, you know, as you become more comfortable with it, right, you'll get more of a feel for like, okay, if I don't want to spend, you know, a bunch of money on this ingredient, I can kind of substitute things in. But that does take a little bit of you know, comfort and stuff and getting into it. And I was curious, Lemon, if you had any kind of tips or recommended resources for people that want to start getting into cooking. Maybe this cookbook isn't quite there, but something that's, you know, a little more simplified for people that are like, okay, maybe one day I'll make coffee biscuits, but I need to increase my comfort level a little bit first.
Yeah, I definitely have lots of tips for people who want to try to get into cooking. A lot of what I make on stream is at or beyond my level of cooking, which is probably advanced for most people. And it gives people ideas for what to try. And it also, I give lots of tips from school to get people, to try new things. But I'm also often asked, like, what should I try if it's like I've literally never cooked before? And the answer to those questions, I like very first lesson of Culinary 101, like the first class I took, Culinary Arts 1, is cold food. So you make like a bean salad. So do something that's gonna get you to be comfortable with your knife because you're gonna be using a knife a lot. So like how to process an onion, how to process a bell pepper, those kinds of things. And once you're comfortable with your knife, then the next lesson is building flavors with stocks and soups and extracting flavors from meat and bones or vegetables and fish, and then using those in other recipes. And from there it sort of builds on itself. So really, like, the very first step I would recommend is cold food. So like do sandwiches and like make egg salad. Like you could make the Bismarck from this book. I haven't looked at the recipe, but it's basically egg salad. So like can you go wrong, really? Like I love egg salad. I know some people don't like it, but start with cold food and go from there. And I had a really good conversation the other day in stream about, I think it was Odakota Rose. They asked me what books I recommend or what tools I recommend to get good at cooking. And the number one thing I say about the thing that you need to get good at cooking is to pay attention to your own taste and palate. Eat a food and think about why you like it and make notes. Get a journal and write down what it is you like about it and what you don't like about it. And then maybe try to make it. And if it doesn't work, there's always next time. And the other two things that I recommend are a scale and a thermometer, because I feel like most people's anxiety around, am I doing this right, is, am I going to hurt myself? Like, am I going to give myself food poisoning? Is it done? Is like a question that comes up a lot. Like, is it going to be done? And am I going to hurt myself or other people with this food? Get a thermometer and temp your food. You can completely remove that unknown very easily by getting a thermometer. And then suddenly you can temp, your bread or your custard or your roast. You can literally temp anything and it will tell you when it's done and you don't have to guess, and it'll never be overdone because you've temped it. And scaling and measuring of like that kind of thing is like, did my food come out right? Is it supposed to be like this? If you're weighing and scaling your food, you know exactly whether or not you've done it correctly.
I never thought I would use a scale. My mother-in-law got me one years and years and years ago, and I was just like, thanks, I don't know what I'm gonna do with
Thanks, we'll
this.
just
I
put
used
this
it.
over here.
I use it all the time. I used it for dango because you have to put them in like 3 separate sections and then get those sections and the flavors and then put those in 4 separate sections. I use a scale all of the time. It's a great
It's really
tool.
common to use, like, everywhere except North America. People use kitchen scales. Literally everywhere. So,
It's
I
great.
don't know.
It's a great tool. I
I'm
love it.
still.
Stop resisting. Just
I
use
know.
it.
I know.
We're weird
I
here.
know.
So good.
You are
What if
literally. You are literally
Okay,
echoing.
Rook.
There's a lot of
my right
noise
now.
about kitchen scales that just.
Yes.
My
Rook and I had this conversation at Onicon. We both use a food service where they send you the ingredients and you cook them. So like Blue Apron, HelloFresh, that kind of thing. Sometimes something leaks and it's like, use half of blah. And you're like, well, I was supposed to have this much. So that weighs this much. And then you just weigh it on the scale. You don't have to worry about the fact that you don't have the full amount you have and you're supposed to find half of that. You just weigh it. It's fine.
No. See, this might actually be the source of why I'm so uncomfortable and unsure of baking, because we have a scale, and every time I go about it, my partner stands there lingering in the doorway like, are you using the scale? And I'm like, no! And I think this is very like a cause and effect here. But what I wanted to say is like, oh my gosh, Lemon, all of that is such great advice. I tell people this story a lot because sometimes like you like literally do have to just break it down into the absolute foundations. And when I don't even cook that much, but when I get people asking me on stream for whatever reason, because we were talking about this cast coming up or stuff like that, I say a lot, like I started out with jar pasta, like I was talking about earlier on the cast. And I went, at the time, it was like what I had the money for, And also it was what I had the effort for, you know, I just didn't have the spoons to do much else. So I started just heating up the pasta sauce and then putting it over the pasta that I was making in a pot. And then as time went on, I started looking at the ingredient list on the pasta sauce, what's in there. And then I went, oh, well, if onions are on sale and this says that it has like onion powder in it or something, I'll get an onion and then I'll chop the onion up and then I'll put the onion in a pan and then I'll cook it, I guess, and see how that goes. And then I'll put the sauce in on it and then I'll mix it together
And then
because
suddenly you're cooking. Suddenly,
know.
like you're like, wait a minute, this sauce tricked me.
Exactly. The sauce tricked me into cooking. And it's like over time I started to realize, you know, this is just, it sounds very silly, but I did, you know, Italian pasta sauce. And then I love curry, so I started getting jar curry. And as I was looking at it, like these are not the pinnacles of that form of cooking by any means. But as I looked at the ingredients, I started to realize if I'm making this kind of red sauce, I know if I have dried basil, I can put basil in it. I know that it has garlic in it, so I can even mince garlic and put it in. I know that it has these flavor profiles. And before long, like you said, I made that jump to where I went, I want to try to make this myself from scratch. And I started with like really basic beginner recipes. And then I moved on because I wanted something more authentic. I wanted something that came from different regions that were specific, that used interesting flavors. So then I started researching more about it. And it's one of those things where I think people assume you either have to be an expert at it or you just, there's no way you could ever do it ever, you know, you're just not that kind of person, you know. But
Yeah, that comes up pretty often in for me, like this is not an insult on anybody who calls somebody talented, but a lot of people call me talented, and like I didn't come out the womb cooking, all right? I learned and I spent time and money, and like I go to school and I do it. Like I use my hands and I make the food. It's a skill. It's a skill. It's an art. So like I know that people are using the word talent in like a more colloquial way, and I don't feel bad about it or anything like that. But when you subconsciously say like, oh, that person is an artist and they're talented, it sort of it tells on you that your attitude towards it is that they have something that you can't have, but you can. Literally anybody can cook as long as you're physically able. You can cook. Anybody can learn how to cook. It's something. It's what made us human. So just try. Like even
I'm
it
just
doesn't
like
have to be
imagining
like
a baby
gourmet
being born
meal.
now, and the baby just comes out and it's like,
Oh,
who wants
yeah.
fajitas?
Boom.
Like,
Yeah.
I had a question for you, Lemon. I honestly, I mean, I truly hope that future cookbooks you could have a hand in, because I have been so like, oh my gosh, watching everything from your early YouTube videos to now these streams, the gorgeous photos and like staging of the dishes that you've been doing, which I know has to take a lot of effort and work in and of itself, right? It really is fantastic to see how you've realized a lot of these foods. I was curious if you have a recipe that you've adapted from the game, either that didn't make its way into the cookbook or, you know, could easily have been one of the ones that was in there that you really enjoyed, or you felt like this is something that, I don't know, connected me to some element of the game, or that I really got to do something unique or fun with, that in a way you were like, I really love these dishes and I think they were something that you would want other people to try and make, or that, you know, if there were a future adaptation of this book, you'd want to put in there?
Well, the answer to the question, like the first question about what's like my favorite thing that I like, favorite recipe that I developed, because I haven't done it since 2020. 2020, what a weird way to say that year. 2020. I haven't done it since 2020 because I stopped doing YouTube around the time of COVID, for reasons that I won't get into, but there are reasons. But before that, I did Skybuilder Stew, and I based it. And there is a Skybuilder Stew in the official cookbook, and I haven't looked at it. I haven't tried it. I've only had this for like 2 days, so I've only tried one recipe. Just to clarify, I've only tried one recipe. It's really good. I'm eating it over here. It's the creamy salmon pasta.
Oh my god.
So I do recommend it. It's good. But the Skybuilder Stew that I made is it's a stew. It's a chicken and dumplings thing. But the reason why I made it in the way that I specifically did, is based on my interpretation of the regional experience of Ishgard. And as I mentioned before, I'm Canadian, and there is a French recipe, an Acadian French, like a Quebecois recipe for chicken and dumplings that I came across, and it's on a French blog only. So when you think about chicken and dumplings, it's something kind of more southern, right? That would be your natural inclination for interpreting that food, but it just so happens that the Acadian geography that spans the French region of Canada and along the southern coast of the US and into Louisiana share common culinary traditions. Um, so it's in the same way that like Louisiana was formerly French, Quebec is still French, there's ties there in terms of food. And so when I think of Ishgard and the people of Ishgard and their names and how it's cold and it's French, that's Quebec, friends. That's what it is. And so what I did was I made a chicken and Acadian version of chicken and dumplings based on a real life recipe from that region using French Quebecois cheese because cheese is a common ingredient in Ishgard. There's a blurb in one of the lore books about how they use dairy and cheese a lot. There's like a 1 page spread that's like, hey, we use cheese. And I'm like, yes, you do. Thank you. So I use that and I use like regional ingredients from Curthis. I think it's like chives and pearl sprouts, which are Brussels sprouts, and make it into a stew and put some chive and cheese dumplings on top of it, and suddenly it's very Ishgardian. And it tastes really good. It's easy to make. It only requires one pot. And I think that it's one of my most favorite interpretations of a canonical recipe. Because it's the recipe in game is very basic. It's like water and flour and a chicken fell in the pot. Like that's what the description says. And I was like, okay, well that's very bare bones, but I can put other stuff in it that's from that region and make it more Ishgardian, make it more Kurthan. And it was fun to do that, so I did, and it tasted great. So I'm really happy with that. And
Sounds
I
really
haven't,
good.
like I
Oh.
said, yes, it's super good. And there is a Sky Builder stew, as far as I understand, in this cookbook. I haven't looked at it, I haven't tried it, so I'm sure it's also good. But that only goes to show that there's more than one way to make. I don't want to say that. I don't want to talk about a cat in a weird way, but there's more than one way to make a canonical recipe. More than one way to skin a rail that goes into your chicken stew. Right? There's more than one way to do that, and it's fun. It's fun to like see how other people's brains have interpreted something that I've thought about a lot. Um, and then the other answer to that question is something that didn't make it into this. I'm pretty sure it didn't make it into this, but I recently made egg foo young, which is in the game, and I don't think it's in this. I can't. Like I said, I've only had this for 2 days, so I don't know.
I don't think
One more,
it's-
more than one way to stock a stew, exactly. Egg foo young. So I'm half Chinese. My mom's from Hong Kong. Egg foo young is a food that is from that region of where my mom is from. Pardon me, I've been speaking a lot. And I have not really made egg foo young a lot in my time of cooking at home. And I made it, and it's so good. I was eating it on stream, and I was kind of mad. I was like, this is so good. I was like, I wanted to, like, I don't curse on stream, but I wanted to curse because I was like, I felt like I had robbed myself of the experience of good food for so long by not trying it. And
I know that
there's
feeling.
there's there's like an American version of egg foo young that maybe people are familiar with, where it's deep fried and then sauced. And the reason why it's sauced is because of the way that deep frying removes moisture from your food. So the egg foo young, which is like, it's basically an omelet. It's a Chinese savory omelet, and deep frying makes it dry. It removes moisture. It's a dry cooking method. It removes moisture from your food, so it's sauced in the US, as far as I understand. But in Hong Kong, where my mom is from, it's not sauced. And so I made it like, yes, I'm pretty sure in the game it does describe a sauce, if I remember correctly. Hard to keep track of everything. I'm pretty sure it does describe a sauce, or there's an ingredient that sort of hints to a sauce in it. Um, but I chose
Young
not to do
does say
that.
sauce. I just looked it up for
Yeah.
you. What did it
Okay.
say?
Okay. Good. Thank you. It does say sauce.
Savory.
So I made a specific design decision about making the food to have a closer experience to my cultural heritage, and it was amazing. It was so good. And yeah, no, I hope to be like, at some point in the future, I would like to start developing recipes and posting them again on the internet once I like fix my website. And I recently talked about that on my stream, where I was like, I kind of need some help because I can't test my own recipes. And lots of people in my chat were like, I'm down. Like, let's work on it together. So at some
Yeah,
I
point
will
in the
yeah.
mail
If you need any
you.
help, yeah, we'd love to help test the
Yeah, yeah,
recipes.
yeah.
So if you need
I
any
will mail
help,
you some
testing them
glutinous rice
means
flour,
making them,
and you
by
can
the way.
mail
It doesn't
me.
mean eating them. It means
I
making
mean,
them.
I will make them too. I know how to mostly do that now, unless it's baking, in which case I'll be learning as I go. But
It
I
was it was interesting for me to realize, now that you've said that, Moose, that there is a sauce. It was interesting for me to realize that the localization does contain sauce, because only an American would write that. So you know exactly who wrote that.
yes, and I wonder if the other versions of it have sauce listed. Like
I don't know that it does. I don't know
Let's
that it
find
does.
out. Give me a minute.
Moose is
find
like,
out right now.
I mean,
I have a question for everybody,
mhm.
because we all did at least one recipe from the book. What was your favorite, like, little quirky thing from either the description or making the food itself? Like mine, for example, is when you're making the dough for the dango, they tell you it should feel like an earlobe. I thought that was
Yes,
weird and cute. I really liked
that's
that.
a
I
common
don't think I had
description for
anything
dango.
quite like that in mine.
I thought that was
Um,
neat.
I will say that I think
That's a common description for dango. I'm a big fan of Nami from Just One Cookbook, and her recipe for dango says that as well.
really interesting.
Yeah.
This one isn't so quirky, but I did find it really informative. So in the portion where we were making for the lemon waffles, the lemon curd, I was really worried, like I mentioned earlier, about us overcooking it. And I like while I was working through it,
Thermometer.
I know, thermometer, but I actually found it really interesting because we were like, as we were going through it, like I said, my partner is it's so funny. Before this, my partner was like, "Are you going to make me your like ghost cooker? And are you gonna pretend like I didn't do any of this?" I was like, "No, I'm not. Like, I'm gonna tell everyone that you helped me with this." And one of the things that, as we were going through it, the recipe itself says, you know, when you get to the point that you're curious about whether or not it's done, like dip the spoon in, and then if you like take your finger and you run it down the back of the spoon, if that line stays in it, then you know that it has kind of firmed up enough and has thickened up enough, right? But even as we were going through it and we were working on it, you know, my partner was like, when you're putting your spatula through, do you feel anything on the bottom of the pan? And if I was like, oh, maybe I feel what would be like a really thin kind of gooper film, like, but like not like in any way that would be, you know, like it was chunky, but like maybe it feels like it's clinging a little bit, like I have to kind of push through it. And they were like, okay, lift it up off the heat. Now stir some more, you know, put it back down. And, you know, even kind of like turning it from side to side, where we were looking to see, even just with that, you know, if we drag this through it, does it seem like it is kind of staying, or is it still really liquid? Do you see anything clinging to the bottom? So I found that to be really informative because I had no idea about those sorts of things. So for me, that's my biggest takeaway from that one.
Yeah, so mine, looking at mine, I didn't have anything quite even like earlobe adjacent in my stuff. The description though, the character dialogue that they have with this was really funny. Because honey muffins are a Thanolin region thing. And so it talks about them being at the Gold Saucer and ordering honey muffins and using them to bet while playing Dome and Mahjong, betting with honey muffins. And then it talks about the real trick is to just bring extra tiles.
That's a cheater.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's the flavor text is so good in these. Like it really is.
You're kidding. The languages do differ quite a bit.
I loved hearing you talk about that kind of consideration in the recipes. Or it's funny because I think when it comes to like cooking or regional recipes, like you said, there's a lot of different ways to interpret them. Just like there are a lot of different ways. I know Zen and I, at least, are both very loud about how we are role players. And so it's one of those things where even as people interpret what's in the game, right? The region, the area, the climb, a lot of times you will kind of reference a variety of things. You know, do they have French sounding names? Or, you know, does it seem to draw inspiration from these things, or architecture or time period? But I think a lot of times in the game, people can forget about stuff like the recipes that exist, what kinds of foods are coming from these areas, and even hearing the differences of, you know, the different localization teams. I mean, that is also something that's really fascinating, like in the case of Egg Foo Young. And one of the things I was surprised about in this cookbook was I think the nice array of different types of food they put in there. I would have loved to even see more of like that description that you did, where it's like, this was the region and area that I drew inspiration from, because obviously they're all kind of just making it in canon. But there were some that I definitely was even kind of surprised that of course, this is probably going to be something worldwide, but even for a more Western audience, I went, oh, it's interesting that this one made it in. And one of the ones that I actually really want to cook, but that I didn't have a chance to, is the Chawan Mushi, which I had actually, funnily enough, like while I was writing and role playing not too long ago, had included into something for a character. And then to see it in the cookbook, I was like, oh my gosh, I can actually try it now. You know, I was like, this is so neat. And it was one that I really wasn't expecting to see in that cookbook, because it is like a savory dessert, which in and of itself is something that I don't know. I don't know if as many people will have come in contact with it, particularly for a Western audience. So I was excited to see that, but I really love the kind of history and region of these different foods. And to kind of think about all of that, like I would encourage people, even role players, people who are interested in the story, who maybe haven't delved into these recipes in the game, to look at it from that kind of perspective, because it can tell a lot about what they're thinking for these different regions if you kind of see how they've even told that story through the culinarian aspect of it.
What's the one?
Yeah,
you said?
Chawan
Chawan
Mushi.
Mushi.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard. What is that?
I really want to try it.
Steamed egg. It's a steamed egg food.
Okay.
It's like a sort of savory pudding is what I took away from it, but maybe I might be totally off, because I
would describe it as a savory custard.
custard.
A savory custard.
Okay.
If you want to apply Western terminology to a Japanese recipe.
Sure. I know, it's like, it is what it is in and of itself, but yeah, for people who are curious about what that might kind of, you know, be an equivalent to here, or what we might think of when you're kind of conceiving it in your mind. But it was one of those foods that I think, and you see these all over when it comes to trying different things, right? Like, and trying food from places that you're not maybe familiar with, no matter where you are in the world, because something that seems strange to you is probably very normal elsewhere. And there are different areas of the culinary arts, or even food as I've come into contact with it, where you start going, I should challenge my palate. I should try things that maybe aren't what I would expect from food, or, you know, try things that are different than what just in the case of this dessert, you know, we think of, especially in the US, very sweet, very, you know, like cake and pie and brownies and those sorts of things. But there's a whole range of other types of palettes and foods and things like that. And that was one of the recipes that stood out for me. I don't know everybody else if there were any other recipes in the book that you were curious about trying, but you didn't have a chance to yet, or that looked interesting or different.
I haven't had quite enough time with it quite yet. Like I said, I ordered the Paisa cover copy, so I just got mine this morning, so I would have it for the show in case we needed to look up something.
I did approximately 50 episodes on YouTube. It was like a year of weekly, and I've had I'm approaching around 80 or 90 streams now. So in terms of the number of Final Fantasy XIV foods I've made, like not every stream I do is Final Fantasy 14 food, because I do my homework on stream as well for culinary school. I just finished 6 weeks of Indian cooking class, and I'm 1 week into Korean cooking class right now. So not every single one is Final Fantasy 14 related, but I'm into the mid 100s of how many Final Fantasy 14, because not like sometimes I make 2 recipes in one stream, or I made 2 recipes in one video. So I'm approaching probably like 200 different Final Fantasy 14 recipes, and the thing that I notice about the distribution, there's a question in chat about a split between Eastern and Western. So the book can only reflect what is in the game in terms of how things are distributed. And my interpretation of how the recipes in the game are distributed is that there's quite a lot of, Western inspired dishes and Japanese inspired dishes, with like like a small handful of not in those two categories. So I would love to speak about the future. I would love to see more regions, more overlapping. I would like to see more overlapping of food, and I like the what we were talking about earlier about how there's overlap between Alamegan and Doman food. I would like to see more of that, because I think that there is a lot of, I hear sometimes in the food and drink category, and not just my channel, but in the category in general, there people feel very rigid about food tradition and what is not a food. And to a certain extent, um, doing fictional food sort of puts a little bit of space between me and that nonsense. But one of the one of the like the best things about it is that I get to like decenter my own personal food experience and interpret other food authentically. Like, I don't mean like the food authentically, but I can authentically myself. I can insert myself into the mindset of somebody else who is familiar with that food. And I don't always have to think of a food in relation to how it is familiar or not familiar to me. It's just a food from the game. And I've played the game for 7 years. So like, you know what I mean? Like it sort of, it strips away that like, oh, that food is, I hate this word, but it's foreign or exotic. Those terms, when they're a little bit of a yikes. Because those foods aren't foreign to like millions and billions of people. So, like those, like if we were talking about like Doman food or like Alamegan food or like uh food from Hingashi, like somebody from Eorzea is going to interpret that food differently in terms of their experience. So it's interesting as a person who's like sort of like inserting my own brain into the game by like experiencing the food and the culture. I don't I can sort of like I can just take that level of bias away. Like it doesn't go away completely. It doesn't go away completely, but I can at least sort of like transcend it and experience something without the bias. As
Well,
as little bias as possible.
I think that's such a brilliant point, honestly, because you're right. I mean, so many times we consider things, and like you said, I mean, and I think like especially I don't want to generalize, but particularly I know many people who grew up in smaller, you know, especially kind of Midwestern. I don't want to. This is where I'm from, right? But like you grow up in like a smaller Midwestern community or places like that where the idea or concept of being outside of where you are, right, outside of the U.S., outside of the experience of whatever you've had, can be very daunting and strange to people, to the point where you get, yes, this idea of this concept of like our food and foreign food or things like that, where there are these separations where you're right, we are all living everywhere simultaneously at all times. We exist, cultures, people, civilizations, it's not like anywhere, and the developments that they have had are any different than anywhere else in this world, right? They are all different traditions, and they are all things that have come about from humanity. And it's very fascinating to me that within the context of something like a game, we've talked a lot in the past about how a game can facilitate many levels of things, and especially in MMO, everything from self-discovery, being able to realize yourself through an avatar. We discussed a lot of interesting things about that with the LGBT episode and all kinds of things. But to also create an actual experience that is almost lived in going to places that are maybe unfamiliar horizons in a sense, right? Whereas like in real life, traveling, is something that people may or may not be able to do regardless of pandemic. But in a game, you have been there. You have traveled, you have lived those regions, you have been in those places. And it's amazing to me how that can create a bond where suddenly people get a cookbook like this, right? And it's
Mhm.
not like, oh, I'm trying to cook something from this totally unfamiliar place, unbeknownst to me. It's like, it's from Eorzea, or it's from Doma, or it's from, and it's
Yeah,
on one,
it gives you a place to
yeah.
hang up, to suspend your disbelief a moment. To like the game is just like, oh, like this isn't like Japanese food. It's food from Hingashi, or it's not Chinese food. It's Doman food, or it's not Vietnamese food or Southeast
Yeah.
Asian food. It's Naksha food pronunciation. And you just
Yeah.
can, it gives you a spot on the wall to pin the preconceived notions that you have about a certain culture or food tradition, and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna ignore that for a minute. Like, obviously don't like disrespect, like, I mean, no
No,
disrespect at
like,
all, but
no,
if
and like,
it can give you a place where it can
yes,
if it can put you in a mindset where you can be more open-minded, then I think that that's positive.
of course. And it's like, we shouldn't draw those distinctions anyway. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where I think there is something really to be said about the power of games and or learning through that, and trying different things and just broadening your own horizons real in the world. Like, I think that's so important. But I had not really contemplated, especially in regards to food or the power of cookbooks like this, how that can be, I think, a stepping stone for people, to take something that may not be a part of their lived experience, but to give them a tie to it, in a way that would make them excited about it, or like get them engaged with new palettes, flavors, regions, areas. It's definitely worth looking into and researching the origins of a lot of these different foods, looking up a ton of different recipes, and even like you were saying, I mean, even some of the hybrid stuff that comes out, or like
Mhm.
there's so much interesting fusion cooking and histories of that. I was even just watching a fascinating retrospective on like Chinese American cooking recently. There's so much stuff that talks about like these traditions, where they came from, the origins. It's really, really fantastic to see it in game. And I hope with Thavnair we do maybe get Thavnair, Charlie, and even Mediterranean cooking. We already have a lot of stuff in Thavnair that seems to draw from various regions of India. Like, it'd be so great to see the full range of different things in the game, recipe wise, continue to expand too. Um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping that they will expand to different countries, like inspiration from different countries IRL. Not because I'm tired of seeing, Western and Japanese food, just because, like, other countries have good food too.
Mhm.
Hello? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
show us something new. Show us something new. And like, I'm looking forward to it. I don't have any expectations. I don't know. I don't think I don't have any like I don't have any theories about like what's going to happen. I'm just gonna take it as it comes and see what happens. But earlier you asked a question about what was a detail that I really liked
Oh yeah.
about the recipe that I worked on, or that I made from the book. And the recipe that I made from the book is the creamy salmon pasta, which um, it's a roux thickened sauce. So like you mix fat and flour together and use that to thicken cream, and it has a lot. It's kind of I was gonna say chicken. It's kind of a kitchen sink. There's the list of ingredients is very long. It's like 17. It's extremely long. For my particular interpretation of what should be like a really quick pasta dish. You probably don't even really need to like measure things out. You could probably just grate your cheese directly into the pan, or like zest your lemon directly into the pan. But this recipe is pretty long, and I don't question the like decision of the recipe writer, of Victoria, in this situation. I don't question it. I just do it and I see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not really that picky about food, outside of like food intolerances that I have. I'm lactose intolerant and I can't digest beef. Out of those things, I will literally eat anything. I'll try anything. I think that's one of the advantages that I have in this particular field of study is that I'm very open-minded about what I'm willing to eat. And that has a lot to do with my background and eating Chinese food growing up. But aside from that, the actual detail that I really liked about this recipe is that it doesn't actually contain any salt, like no grains of salt. If you look at the recipe, there's no salt in the list. And I wasn't thinking about that when I was making it because I was streaming and talking to people and saying nonsense, as I normally am at the time when I'm streaming. Ugh. But I got to the end and I was like, is this do I need to season, like, because there's always like there's a chef's instinct to season, right? It's there. It exists and you're like, food needs salt, right? So I was like, wait a minute, like I'm feeling this feeling that I need to fulfill an instinctual desire. I need to fulfill an instinctual desire and it's not happening. What's going on? So I noticed, I like looked at the list of ingredients. There's fish sauce in it, and there's Parmesan in the sauce, and smoked salmon. The in-game recipe is like olive oil, butter, salmon, spinach. I think that might be it. I think it's only those four, if I'm remembering correctly. There's no wait, there's no lemon. There's no lemon in the in-game. I remember thinking that was weird. So I think it's olive oil, butter, salmon, pasta, the vermicelli, and the spinach. So I get to the end and it has smoked salmon in it, and smoked salmon is also salty. So when you get it all together and you mix it in the pan and you eat it, you realize that you made a sauce that has no salt in the sauce, which is interesting. That's a really interesting and unique thing to do in a recipe, to have it perfectly seasoned. And I like salty food. So I like my food to be very salty. It's interesting to come across a recipe that doesn't contain any salt in it, that turns out perfectly. For my personal taste, I found it to be not quite acidic enough. I wanted it to be more lemony to balance the richness of the cream and the cheese and the butter and the oil. But that's just personal preference. So I thought that was an interesting detail. It's a chef's detail, but it's an interesting detail nonetheless.
interesting, yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Did you
I
have
wanted-
a detail, Moose?
I don't know. Like, well, first off, my book ain't here yet.
Oh no.
So I've been bumming pages off of people to get my stuff done. That's what I've been doing. So no, I don't think I have like a very specific detail down yet that I think is kind of the cool thing that I've noticed. I just really like that potions are booze.
Yeah.
I just think that's a great touch.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
actually heals you, it just helps you forget about the pain.
Just eases
Yeah.
the pain a little, yeah.
You're still bleeding, but I feel better. I'm going back in.
I feel great.
I mean, to be
Yeah,
fair, I've
you just
almost
get a little
finished
numb.
this potion and I don't feel anything, so it's fine.
I was
Just an
really
interesting
happy.
touch. Like, good.
Oh, I was just gonna say I was really happy they put the hot chocolate in. That was all.
Yeah.
I was happy. I was glad they did. And that they had a mix of like alcoholic, non-alcoholic drinks at the end.
Mhm.
That was nice because not everybody does drink, or it should be expected to in many ways. But that hot chocolate, I didn't get to make it yet, but I'm coming for it because we have most of the ingredients, and I thought it looked very tasty. And I mean, you just have to have it. Come on.
I
just
don't know
think
if
it's
the
a-
one... Go ahead.
I just think it's an interesting sign of like how far we've come as kind of a fan base. Like if you think about, 10, 20 years ago in Final Fantasy, it was hard to imagine there would ever be a lore book, never mind like a
Mhm.
cookbook where the potions are booze.
Well,
we know there was pushback on the lore book too, and then they were like, "Oh
you're
wait, people
welcome,"
want-"
because I don't know if this cookbook would exist if it wasn't for my content. Obviously the author created it, and like 100% credit to her. I'm a big fan of her work. But like, is there any other Final Fantasy game that has a cookbook?
Nope.
I mean, no, it just goes to show, like, there are so many parts of this game that I think people have expanded on with content in a way that shows an interest in areas or regards that a lot of times companies are like, nobody would care about this, I mean, like, while there are other MMO cookbooks that I can think of, I really feel like, from what I've seen, 14 and particularly, gosh, I mean, like, yeah, it's you. It's like I think there was like
I mean,
one.
it's not just me. Like, I'm not the
No,
first
no, no,
person
no.
and I'm not the only person.
No. But like when you think about certain like areas of the content that I think have really been pushed forward by key content creators, I always think of you at the top of the food lists. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where it's just like, well, I've seen other people dabble. To develop and channel their passion to something like this is a really unique thing. And yet it shows that there is such an interest and excitement for it. And now this book is out and more excitement and more people, you know what I mean? It's awesome to see. I mean, the same goes when I think about like HG14 and housing. Like it's another, another creator, another group that has done so much stuff in regards to that. Or Moose with lore. Like it's so funny to me how these little aspects or areas of the game that are actually massively comprehensive have over time had these connections to creators and people where it's not just like this is a game that has some food in it. It's like, hey, this is a part of the game that, like you were saying, tells a story. It can even tell a story of the people creating content for it, as you discussed, your heritage in different parts of your life or regions that you've grown up in or things you're experimenting with. Like, that's what makes an MMO dynamic and exciting to me. That element, that human connection, and the ways that especially content creators realize this. To see this cookbook, I think, is an exciting win because it does go to show that just like the lore books, Moose, like you were saying, people are like, oh, why are we doing these? This is terrible. It'll make lore canon and we can't have that. It's like, it turns out people actually really do love these tangible things that they're passionate about.
I like the positive, what I call like a positive feedback loop. Like there's a
Hmm.
little bit of it, it's well received. There's more of it, it's well received. There's more of it, and it just keeps growing and growing and snowballing. Because without people like you, and especially you, I would still just be making lemon or wizard cookies and being like, "This is the pinnacle of in-game food." Like,
Yeah, I mean, like it's a team effort, and like I said, I'm not the first person, and I'm not the only person. There's plenty of blogs and other content that's out there that I was inspired by, and not only was I inspired by it, I was inspired to do it in a way that I know, like to better myself. I was like, I could do that. I don't see why not. And I started doing it, and then I was like, you know what? I don't really feel like I know enough about this to be an authority on food. Maybe I'll just go to cooking school. Okay, I'm in cooking school now. Sure, great. That's what happened in my life. Like I don't
didn't know
have a job.
that.
I make
That's so
food on the
wonderful.
internet. That's my job. I do this full time. This is what I do. So like I'm in school, I make food. I'm on the internet, I make food. That's my job. So like it's in a way like it's a little bit selfish. Like I really I have to be honest. I don't really do it for other people. It's more like I wanted to do it to better myself and get to know the game more and like understand the culture and just expand my knowledge and my skill. And I was like, I want to do this anyway. I might as well share it because I'm probably going to do it anyway. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And
I
one of the things that like I used to be a piano teacher. I've had many jobs in my life, but I used to be a piano teacher, and I took piano lessons for many years. My dad was a pianist. And I used to always say to people that the best way to really solidify your knowledge in something is to teach other people. So that's helping me. People redeem culinary facts in my chat, and I read from my textbook to the chat, and we learn together. So it's again, it's like yet another positive feedback loop where it's like I'm learning and then I'm teaching other people and it solidifies my knowledge and other people get to learn. Like it just keeps going and going and going.
think I just
It's
assumed
fun.
that you were a culinarian student and then we're like, well, I have this knowledge. Let me put together recipes. But it was the other way around. That's amazing.
It was the other
I
way
really
around.
like
I
that.
actually always wanted to do it. I wanted to go to baking and pastry art school out of high school, but I was discouraged from doing so.
Yoshi
Didn't work.
P
Didn't
encouraged
work
you to
out.
follow your dream.
Yeah, now you've
Oh
done
my
encouraged
God.
yourself into it, and you're doing
Yeah,
amazing
exactly.
things.
Wonderful.
So
Oh,
don't let anybody tell you that video games can't improve your life because
my
it
heart
can.
grew 3 sizes just now. There's
Oh,
no room
that's
for
too,
my
that's
lungs
sweet.
anymore.
Oh, do you have room for cookies here?
Oh,
Here you go.
Oh, I wish we could eat them. Are you kidding me? You're just taunting us now.
I
Ever
I
since
thought
you
I was
held
gonna do
that plate
so
up.
good. I'm like, I'll make the stuff before the show. I'll eat some. The show won't make me hungry, and I'm like, my tummy is growling. It's like food. All
Everybody
this
says
food
that it
talk.
like people new come through in my chat and they're like, "Oh no, I just ate and I'm so hungry." And I'm like, "Rookie mistake.
Yeah.
When I got
You
my
gotta come
cookbook,
here ready."
yeah, when I got my cookbook,
Hey, you
we
need
had not
Austrian
cooked
food.
dinner
Exactly.
yet.
See, June, here you go. Have some pasta. There you go.
Now, Moose, I have a question for you. I was
Uh-oh.
going to ask you if there was any tidbits of lore in the book that you found interesting, but considering
I
that
have no
you
idea
have
yet.
exactly, so I'm going to scrap that. That one's
Darn.
done. The next question is there an area of lore, kind of like cooking in this regard, that you would think would be really interesting to see them explore or engage with in another official capacity, like in a book or some sort of series or
That's tough because it would have been the cooking.
nothing else? No other interesting
Hmm.
facet? I put you on the spot,
I
I
think
know.
it is a little on the spot, and my mind, like, I do process information quickly, so I'm like trying to cobble it together into the answer that I would like provide it for. I think there would be a really interesting market for kind of role playing with the community a little bit to make a synthesis guide for like real life, because there's so much stuff on Etsy where they could take items from the game and show you how to make kind of trinkets that you could have that were kind of from the game, themed like the game. I think that you could find a way to make like a crafter's manual or something like that that would actually be fun to do.
That would be
Especially
so
could they be like,
fun.
especially like there would be ones for different ages, I imagine, because some would be simple and easy and for kids, and some would be probably a little more expensive, a little more
That could
difficult.
be
But
tricky though, because like product marketing to be like, or we could just make them and sell them.
yeah, or you could just make them and sell them.
Well,
do
but
like-
I agree with you. I think there would be a reason to do that though, right? Because like people resonate with the crafting gathering component for a specific reason. Just like
Then-
Lemon, you resonated with the food, like to have something and make it yourself. There are so many people in this community who love to do that, from cosplay to anything else. I could absolutely see a group of people wanting to create things themselves and be like, hey, IRL, I crafted,
I was gonna say cosplay, and even in the art books with the character designs, where the characters are like this, you can get proportions off of the weapons, off of their clothes and stuff, and you can recreate that. But it would be nice to have patterns, just like straight up, here's the pattern to sew this. You don't have to figure it out yourself.
Can you imagine if they released a series of sewing patterns of like the crafted outfits and people
like the
would go
Scions
ham.
outfits?
Mhm.
So they don't need to sell the finished products, they just need to sell you the mats.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just give me the pattern. Leave it.
I think that would work, and like that's an interesting subject to sort of like expand upon, because when we were talking about when I made this on stream, because this is my second time making this, the creamy salmon pasta, I made it on stream on Wednesday, but I also made it alongside the version that I created for my website. And that specific video I did, just to give a little bit of background on it, I did like a 2-version video where I made it exactly as it is in game and it's bad, and then I made it like the better version. And a lot of people like that format. Obviously, it's like the binging with Babish format. One of the reasons why, like the main reason why I don't do that is because I don't like wasting food. I think it's ethically wrong to waste food. So, especially now and during the like pandemic time, it was something that I felt very uncomfortable with doing. But the conversation that I had about making the food in 2 different ways, like I'm making this same dish 2 different ways. Like, why? Why are you doing that? Like, I wasn't doing it because I wanted to be like, which one is better? It's to see how someone interprets and creates something from the same source material. And in the chat, we have a few cosplay creators, and one of them commented, they said something, they're like, oh, it's neat that you like it's really interesting that you can come up with 2 completely different recipes that taste completely different from the same source material. And I was like, yeah, well, it's not that different from what you do when like you make a cosplay from the source material and it looks a certain way, and there might be 10, 20 30 other people doing the same cosplay of the same character, and it's going to be slightly different. It's not that's an almost exact parallel of what I was doing, right? And they were like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." That's like it's interesting to think about those things where you're like, "Oh, hey, we're not so different after all. We're all just making we're all just making stuff from the game that we love, you know?" It's true. It's true. And I think that would be very well received. I think if people had a way, cuz you wouldn't only be able to make clothing and cosplay from those things. You could also make like minis. You could make minis
Mm.
from those too, right? You could make little
Yeah.
outfits for little dolls or
Like
whatever
a
plushies
Dolphy.
too.
Are you okay,
If
Rook?
you
Well, I was just thinking how cute it would be if they themed it around how how we have like the wind up, minions and
There you
stuff,
go.
or like the little plush. I was like, oh, that'd be so cute
you'd
if you
scale
could
them up
make
or
your
down, and suddenly you have like a Moogle costume, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you
When
can
they
dress
were
up your alpha and like
Yeah. When they were releasing the Pisces with like the cook hat and stuff, I was like, I wonder how well outfits for Pisces would sell on Etsy.
I have that. It's right there.
Yeah, there he is.
They probably
Well, you
sell
you
good.
you have to have that, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
I was like, the credit card thing. I was like,
Yeah.
take it.
Give me
Here's my money.
Chris in chat said if they ever made a cosplay book, they'd have to do it from Tataru's point of view because she's the one who's so good
Oh,
at
that's such a
running
good
around.
idea.
Oh, that
That's
would be so
fantastic.
good.
That's great.
That's such a good idea.
Really, really cute.
Oh my
Unfortunately,
god,
we
that is such a
do
good idea.
need to start wrapping up. Moose is a very popular, highly in demand person today. So, was there any last thing we wanted to talk about before we do the outros? I think we
I think
covered
just
quite a
I think
variety of.
Where
overall,
can I
maybe just
find Moose's thoughts on the lore in the book when you get around to reading it?
It's a good question. I will find a way.
Okay.
I will
If I
think.
find
I'll
a
think about
way,
the best because otherwise it's going to be just like a tweet stream, just like 500. I'll just go page by page.
I mean, I'm just
if
throwing
that's
this
what
out
it
there,
is, then
but
I'm already
you know,
following you, so that's fine.
you have access to this platform called gamerscape.com, where you could, theoretically
Do I
write.
still you guys haven't thrown me out in my grad school journey?
No, you're still
No,
here.
I haven't posted anything in like 2 years.
I think you're still on our team page. Yeah.
Well, good. Okay. Well, that may be where you could find that.
Oh, okay. Oh, I also wanted to say that I use Gamerscape all the time for what I do. It's easier to find things in certain contexts. Like when I'm doing research, I commonly use Gamerscape. If I'm trying to link to something like the official in-game recipe in my stream, I link to the um, Eorzea database. Is that what it's called? What is it called? Eorzea
That sounds right.
database. I link to that, but when I'm doing research, I'm always using Gamerscape. So thank you. Thank you.
Hey, good job, Wiki team.
Oh, nice job, Wiki fam. Oh my gosh. No, I mean,
Alright.
I was just going to say overall, did we have final thoughts on the cookbook? Would you recommend other people to get the cookbook? Do you think it was a good variety?
I mean, this was the first time I've baked anything and it didn't come out like absolute ass. So there is hope for all of you out there.
I've only tried one recipe, but it's really good. And like I said, even if you don't cook, it still has value to you if you want to read the flavor text in the book.
Definitely.
Yeah. What I tried was good. And I mean, like I said, there's a big range of stuff and a lot of ways that you can learn, adapt, or, check it out. If you love the game, it's definitely a great way to start getting into it and connect with it in a different way.
Yeah, and if you have questions, you can always go to twitch.tv/pixelatedvika, or you can go to my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/a-recipe-reborn. I do have a culinary background. I don't know everything, but if you have questions about like just anything food related, I'm there. I'm ready to answer.
All right, let's go ahead. We'll run our outro here. If you want, you can contact me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all that stuff at Raffledurg. Zen, where can they find you?
I am at Xenedra_A on Twitter. On Twitch, I am Strawberry Bap. And YouTube, I'm plus one shot. That's the word plus the number one, the word shot. And I'm actually doing a show tonight around 10 p.m. Eastern. It's an Diablo 2 setting. That's D&D stuff.
Moose, where can they find you?
Pretty much any lore room, but Gamer Escape especially, Discord, and then Twitter at Anonymoose XIV, lore forums, pretty much anywhere good lore discussions happening.
And Rook.
Yes, you can still find me currently everywhere, Bird of Chess. Very soon, that's going to be changing to Rookery, though, Rookuri, so keep an eye out and don't panic if you see the change. But you can mostly find me on Twitch, YouTube, talking on podcasts like this, or over on Twitter.
And if you want, you can email us here at the show directly, aetheryteradio@gamerescape.com. You can find us on Twitter at aetheryteradio, and you can also find us on all the things at Gamer Escape, Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and Discord, discord.gg/Gamer Escape. You can join our 14 discussions. We will probably, at some point here, coming up, have a big, huge lore spoilery channel for Endwalker. So if you are going through and you need to geek out with some people, that'll be a good place to go. No show next week because we will be out for Thanksgiving here in North America. But the week after that, U.S. Sorry, I was trying to I'm like, that doesn't sound right. But yeah, all right, yeah, no, U.S. The week after that, I believe that's December 4th. Rook has a very special episode that she's gonna lead us with.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh,
Talking
I had a
about.
moment where I was like, "Oh, do I?
Do I? What am I talking about? Uh-oh. We actually have it. We have the we have a couple new emotes in the chat now too. So we have our Nautilus emote. We are good and ready to go for this lore crafting show. So join us again December 4th. I think it's the 4th. Yes, December 4th for that. And we will see everybody then. Have a great week. We're gonna let Moose go. Moose is gonna be over on Mog Talk here, so we're gonna let him go, and we'll be throwing a host to them in a minute. So thanks everybody for sticking around, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
It was so nice to officially meet you. I feel like I can stop lurking and actually engage in your channel now. I'm visiting all the
It's okay.
time.
Lurking is fine. Lurking is fine.
Yes. Remember, A Recipe Reborn. Go check it out.
Yeah,
And
A Recipe Reborn is where I'm at everywhere.
all the
Instagram,
things.
Twitter, YouTube in the past, and mainly Twitch and Twitter.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out today, and we will see you later.